Hello, guys, gals, and everybody else in between. This is Silas. I'm back with my friend Stephen. Say what's up to the peoples.
Hello, everyone. Hope you're all doing well.
And we are here talking about it's another in our series of Dish and a Dish, which is a sub-series of the You Are What You Consume. So tell us a bit about the restaurant that we're going to be talking about today, which is called Babbo. It's Babbo, Babbo,
Yep.
Babbo. Babbo. I feel like I should be saying Babbo or something, but I don't know why. Babbo.
Sure.
Babbo.
So
Okay.
the full name is Babbo Ristorante and Enoteca. For those who don't know, Ristorante, I think you can tell it's Italian for restaurant. Enoteca actually translates as wine repository. Basically, this restaurant's known for having a vast wine selection. So this was founded in June 1998 by Joe Bastianich, who's the son of Lydia Bastianich, who was my previous employer, and also by Mario Batali. He's since fallen from grace. I think we've talked a little bit about that, some of the whole Me Too movement and everything. So he's no longer involved with the restaurant. He was bought out, but originally it was both of them. Mario was the chef, of course, the vision with the food and all that, and then Joe was, of course, the wines. That's more his background. Joe is a restaurateur as well, but he's more known for wines. He hasn't really. I don't think he's worked in a kitchen really at all. So Batali was responsible, I think, for popularizing a lot of ethnic Italian dishes. Not the Italian American stuff, but bringing back a lot of organ meats and a lot of other dishes that people aren't as familiar with. He had a number of shows on the Food Network, and because of that, he became very popular. He opened these restaurants. He opened Del Posto, which is now close to with Lydia. I think that might have been before Babbo, and this was opened in '98 with Joe. Joe opened his own place. What was it called? What is it? Becco in the earlier '90s. That was just him. But then some of these are team efforts. But like I say, once Batali fell from grace, he was just bought out. Place is still doing well. I first went there. I'm trying to think. It was around. When I worked at Netta, so that would be a number of years ago now. That'd be like 20. I'm trying to think 2015, 2016. I actually worked a block up from there, and we used to hang out at this place, the 8th Street Wine Cellar. It was a big industry place. A lot of restaurant people hung out there, so especially people who worked in that immediate area. So there were people from Netta, there were people from Babbo. It's now closed, but there was the pizza place Odo. People from there hung out as well. So we just kind of crossed paths, and a bunch of the people encouraged me to come in. I thought, why not? I work right here. So I came in once on my own. Then I came in a while later with our friend Andrea. I came in on my own, and then let's see, I came in with my mom, Andrea, my friend Chris, and my friend Angela, and then I went once more on my own, and then I went once with Christine. So altogether, I think I've been there 5 times. Was it? Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah. So with this, he's talking about things. If y'all are familiar with this series, welcome back. If you're new in this series, this is a series where we talk about specifically the dishes, and those are the times that he's been there. And he'll go to be, once we get to talking about the food, there'll be pictures of the food, and we'll kind of go back and forth on it. So with the Dishing on Dish being a subsection of the You Are What You Consume series, it's a series that we normally talk about food and other things like that. Like You Are What You Consume was just in general, just the things that you eat and the proteins, the fats, the carbohydrates that actually build up who you are. But then You Are What You Consume was now just about the food industry and just foods and eating and cuisine and things like this. And Dishing on Dish is specifically about particular restaurants and particular food that Stephen and sometimes other people have enjoyed. And then he takes the time to take some pictures, and we kind of just discuss them. And we talked about several other restaurants before, and with Stephen's background, actually having worked in kitchens, worked at the back of the house, front of the house for decades now. Is it decades yet, or is it not yet?
Yeah, I mean, you could say because I started. I mean, if you wanted the retirement home first job I worked in, I started 2005 or so, and then
Okay.
I was working up until March of 2020. That's when I finished. That was when Felidia closed, so that would be, yeah, what, about 15 years? Yeah.
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 So with that, like with Felidia, you mentioned that we did a separate just You Are What You Consume, where you're talking about Felidia just closing and things like that around the pandemic. And then we also have specific one on Felidia and many other restaurants where we have in the Dish on Dish series. And that's where he had mentioned talking about Mario Batali before. We talked about more on that. He also mentioned like Netta was another place that we worked. We still haven't done the Netta talk yet. I'm still looking forward to actually doing that. So with this series, he just has different restaurants that he's going to now, some that are closed, unfortunately, some are closed. because I have this suspicion that Stephen is a manager that goes and closes places. But when you're actually familiar with the restaurant industry, you understand these are businesses in general are very, very thin margins of actually success. And restaurants, even though everybody eats, in a way, maybe because everybody eats, there's so many restaurants, so there's always people looking for other food. So you don't really have a captive audience. Getting your captive audience in order to actually get people to regularly come to your restaurant and maintain quality and maintain customers, that's a challenge, right? That's just a general challenge in this.
To sort of add on to that, I don't know if you ever watched the show Dragon's Den. It's like the UK version of Shark Tank, basically similar idea. And they talked about that and how to even start a business, I mean, to convince someone to invest in you, you either have to have some intellectual property thing, you have to be the first to do something, or you have to have some brand name that people will come there because you're a name, or some combination of those. Because it's like you just want to open a place just because it's like it's very hard to make that succeed. But with some of these people like Lydia, and Lydia, Mario, all them, they had their shows. So if they open a place or sold products with their names, people will buy that. It's not that, I mean, the dish, you could argue the recipes are their own skills, their own inspiration and all that. But I mean, they didn't invent everything from the ground up. They took certain dishes, tweaked them, expanded, but at the same time, they're able to popularize them, sell them, all this. So then when they open restaurants, people will come there because they're fans of these people.
Yeah, and that is the thing, because pasta is pasta. Pasta is pasta is pasta. But is it really pasta is pasta is pasta? Because yes, it's boiling flour and is this flour, water, eggs? Is it an egg? Yeah, flour, water, eggs. Essentially, that's a typical thing in pasta.
Yeah.
Making that it's pretty simple. You put it in the water, you boil it, but it can also be messed up in many ways. And the good thing with the Stephen, he's found some very good restaurants that we've gone over, and it's been really good to actually look into these things. We both cook personally in our personal lives, and there's also a website, chefnutup.carmen33.com. You can check that out for some of the food that I posted. You can definitely check out Stephen's Instagram. He posts a lot of good food and good dishes that he's been on there. So some of the things that you'll see in this series, he posts ahead of time because we have a kind of backlog for some of these things. And there's other content and things like that you can get from us. And there's already at least 12 other restaurants by the time you listen to this, so I think will already be up. And we have, like I said, Neto is already one that we haven't talked about. Stephen is still eating, and Stephen now is getting to the point where he's going to be cooking more. I'm going to be cooking more. My sister's actually coming to visit, so we might there's more content coming if you're interested in the food things. And we normally go for about an hour and a half per part of this one. I think it's probably going to be about 2 to 3 parts for this one. And for those of y'all who just want to jump to the food, there's different sorts of menus wherever you're listening to this, so you can jump to the different dishes and hear us talking about those dishes in particular. But since this is the first one for a restaurant, we normally go into more a bit the background into it. So I'm going to just start with asking questions about the place and the content and then the classes and things like that, and just kind of back and forth before getting to the actual food, where our beautiful faces will go off the screen, and you'll get into that. So let's just start with the location. Stephen is in New York City, which is the restaurant capital of the world, and he's worked there. He said he's eaten there, he's still there, and there's still places that he actually visits there. We'll eventually spread out to other places, but for now, tell us about the location of Babbo.
Sure. So it's in the West Village. It's actually its own road. It's called Waverly Place. It doesn't have a number. I used to work on West 8th. Netta was at, if you picture, there's West 8th Street, and then there's McDougal partway in the middle of it, and that goes down. If you go down McDougal, that will intersect to Waverly Place, and that's where Babbo's located. It's a very quiet street. I mean, the restaurant's easy to walk by. There's a little sign, but it's very quiet. It's kind of nondescript. Of course, with the lockdown, they've started doing dining outdoors. I've eaten outdoors once, but before that wasn't the case. I'm not sure how many seats there are. I mean, there's a bar area. There's a few like little tables around the bar, then there's a few big tables, and in the back there's another section, and I want to say there's an upstairs too. I'm trying to think. I'm not sure how many seats are off the top of my head, but it's flexible. I mean, they can do events and things, and then there's a massive wine cellar downstairs. Again, that's in line with the name. The previous beverage director at Netta actually he met Joe Bastianich once, and I guess Joe invited him there for lunch, and he actually went downstairs and checked out the wine cellar, said it was really awesome.
Cool. Yeah, they seem to have here on the website some private dining options. So private events, the menu, the news and press, location and hours. So yeah, can you tell us a bit? It's white table, but then I've seen that the white tablecloth thing is something that we've talked about before. Is one of the typical things of Michelin star. Is this a Michelin restaurant?
This had one Michelin star. I think they lost it and they regained it back, but I'm not sure what the status is currently. Like it kind of went back and forth. Um, I'd have to check what it is at present. I think they may have one star still though. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've talked about this separately with that. And yes, it is Michelin with the tire company for some reason. I guess because also the people used to travel more, and then
Yeah.
if somebody who's traveled more, because people used to be a lot more landlocked, so it kind of makes sense. Like the people who are traveling will be visiting different restaurants, then they somehow actually started becoming the people to decide which restaurants are actually good and which ones are not. But yeah,
Well,
that's kind of
well,
something you have there.
it actually relates because we talked about it in a previous video, but it's the idea that is this restaurant worth going a little out of the way for, or is it worth going to this place just for this restaurant? And that's a whole other trip rather than, okay, this is just, I'm going to go out to eat in this place that I had, this area that I happen to be in. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, tell us now a bit about the ambiance. What is it like inside? Do you feel it's like a place for like romantic restaurant type of thing, or is it just like a chilled, laid back type of thing? It's not like a frat type of just like guys going out and getting a couple of drinks and going out to drink and eat there. What do you think it's like?
I think the restaurant itself is pretty versatile because, like, for example, I went with Christine and we sat at a two top. There's a few tables that are a little more private. You can sit at the bar area. Of course, that's communal. You know, I usually, if I do that, I'm by myself. I just talk to whoever's next to me. When I went with mom and friends, it was what was it, a five or a six top, so you can do things like that. And my old boss at Felidia was telling me that Felidia and Babbo have very different clients because with Felidia it's a lot of older people who have watched Lydia for decades and then it's like
Mhm.
their family that comes. But with Babbo it's an interesting mix because you have people who will come and get a plate of pasta, some wine and leave. Then you'll have couples on dates. Then you'll also have people who will sit down and do the chef's tasting or the pasta tasting. And then there's like I'm something in between where like I'll get a few courses, but I'm not going to go like all out either. So
Yeah, so here on the website we have the different dinner things. The dinner, the antipasti, the primi, the secondi, the contorni, and then the dolci. And there's
yep.
also tasting menus. So this is something that is rather typical for Italian restaurants. I know I've lived in Italy for like 3 years, so this is a typical type of thing. The average genuine Italian kind of experience of dinner. So it's like a 3 hour ordeal. It's like you get the salad by itself, then you get like the pasta by itself. Pasta doesn't normally actually come with the protein. It's normally like pasta, the veg with some sauce and things like that. And then you have the meat just separate by itself. And then you have like a dolce or a dessert. And then you have like a thing like maybe a coffee after the dessert or like a limoncello or something like a grappa after. And then, yeah, even if you have that's kind of a type of thing where you sit and you talk and you enjoy. And it's kind of a laid back type of thing that I've enjoyed with Italian cooking. I'm just not experienced with that whole thing. It's like on the plate you have like your one third of carbs, and you have your protein, you have your salad. That's a typical more of like an American type of a thing that people are familiar with, but that's not how it is. Probably most of no, I guess in some parts of the world where it's kind of like that. Like Japanese cooking, you'll have the many little plates, many dishes at once. Then you have something like with Tanzanian cooking with the injera, you'll have like the different things on the. But that's one type of cooking. So yeah, there's different ways that things are served, but I think that's a typical Italian things of having the things breaking apart where you normally have about 3 to 4, and on average, things per dish that kind of highlight. There's a one highlight, and then the 3 to 4 things support the type of thing. So tell us a bit about the menu, the price range, just like is this one thing I always ask you also? Is it seasonal, where like the things change according to the seasons of what's available, or is it just something that just sticks since you first went to when you've been most recently? How much has changed?
So it's one of those that I think there are certain staple dishes that they keep year round, like with Felidia, things that will always sell in as long as they can get the ingredients. But then there are a lot of seasonal items as well. For example, this time of year, because it's spring, you'll see more pasta with peas, things like that. You'll see, of course, during white truffle season, they have that, things like that. Um, there's a few staples that actually came from Felidia, which is pretty interesting. Maybe we'll go into that as the
Okay.
conversation goes on. There's some dishes that have been here, I know, for a while. For example, there's the beef cheek ravioli, which we'll get into. I actually had that the first time I ate there, and it's still on the menu. So there's things like that yeah, I guess if they're popular enough, they just keep them around. And then, so the appetizers range, I'd say from about 19. The most expensive is what here, 34. So it's like, there's that. Pasta is maybe like mid 20s, high 30s. Entrees are anywhere between like mid to high 30s to like 60s. There's also like a dry age porterhouse, which is 160, but that's like
Yeah,
a big, that's a big, yeah.
for
Um,
two.
yeah, exactly. And the tasting menu, there's actually a pasta tasting, which is interesting. It's 115 per person. I've thought about doing it myself. Like I'm not crazy about eating that much pasta, but it's very creative. But well, it's very creative because the thing is they start with lighter pastas and go to heavier ones, both in terms of like the texture, filling, all that. And you can also do wine pairings. So you'll start with like a very light wine, finish with a heavy red, and do maybe a dessert wine at the end. So what you can do is you can do a wine pairing in addition, which for $85. So you figure altogether that would be about 200 a person. But it's like you get all these pasta courses and wine, so it's pretty interesting. I've seen some people get it; it looks nice. So, like a lighter seafood pasta, and eventually end with like the beef cheek ravioli or something, and of course you get a dessert at the end and all. Looks pretty interesting. And then dessert, they got a good dessert selection that changes. There's a few. I've noticed it's one of those dessert menus where there's a few general items that they always keep and everything else gets kind of tweaked a little. Like there's always a panna cotta, there's always ricotta cheesecake, there's always like sorbetti, things like that, but the flavors and accompaniments just change based on the season and what the chef wants to do. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So that's a typical thing of Italy. Like for those of you who are familiar with Italy, they have a lot of these like regional protezione. I don't know how the actual term for it, but they have regions where are protected. So you have certain foods are cooked in certain areas. So you'll have like amatriciana, which is the one with like the tomato sauce. Normally that's like a Roman type of thing. But then now you go up to like the Turin, the Piemonte area, they'll have like different kind of unique things. So they're like pizza is not even a thing that's like eaten all over. People are like pizza's Italian food, but there's like certain regions in Italy that just don't even eat pizza at all. It's just not a common
Yeah.
thing that they have there. Then of course now the toppings will be different, very different with like the regions and what's there. And of course the places on the coast there'd be a lot of fish in their food, but then the ones where landlocked they'll have almost no fish because some of these traditions go back to like way back where it was like not
Yeah.
that easy to just get shipped like the fish shipped to you like if you're not actually the actual coast. So there is something about that. So with actual Italian places you'll normally see this, but even in current timeline they can get stuff actually shipped from Italy in a matter of even 12 hours. If you're paying enough, you can probably get something fished out of the ocean and then out of the Mediterranean and into your actual kitchen. Yeah, that stuff actually happens. And there's a lot of cool things on YouTube actually with those things of just seeing how people run restaurants. Like for some time, I really got into one of those rabbit holes of watching a lot of these like Japanese restaurants with like Michelin star restaurants like ran by like one guy, like a cashier maybe. It's like maybe like a 5 tabletop and like a like kind of like a bench bar over there. And the guy just wakes up at like 4:30 in the morning every day, and he goes to the market and he just gets all the stuff. Then he comes back and he starts prepping it. He opens by like noon, and then by the time people come in, it's just like a small kind of lunch type of thing. Then he has like the dinner hours, and he's closed by like 10, and then he goes to sleep, and then he just starts again the next day. That's what
Yeah.
he does. But it's like a Michelin star restaurant because he can actually just get the actual ingredients and things like that in that time. So it's a tough thing, and it's something I definitely appreciate. I appreciate Stephen for taking his time to actually come and talk to us about this. I appreciate the people who run these restaurants for making these dishes and giving us the ideas and giving us the time to actually sit there and just appreciate that hey, somebody has spent time cooking for you. And it's I think it's a beautiful thing. Like, I just like the whole restaurant thing. I like cooking, but it's also cool to just sit down and like somebody actually just made this for you. And yeah, you're paying them, but still, it's just a good experience. And the amount of access to food and the knowledge that we have today is so much beyond what most people have had for 99.99999% of humanity. If you listen to this, chances are you have more access to food and restaurants and things than the other people that you've actually talked to. So I think that's part of why we enjoy doing this series, part of why we like talking about food, learning more about the food ourselves, getting ideas of the things that we want to do, sharing them with y'all out there, and also seeing if y'all are interested in other things and participating in this as well. Now, one thing that you were talking about, this is a wine repository, and I was like, okay, right, wine repository. Sometimes we talk about these things. I went and clicked on the actual menu of it. It's a PDF with 80 pages of wine. Like, that's a lot of wine. So what is that aspect of it? Like, I'm sure there's people who probably just go there primarily for their wine range. Do they also give wine to like? Are they a wine supplier to other restaurants? I think it's 80 pages. Like that's a lot of wine.
I don't think so. I do know that Joe produces his own wine in Italy. So does Lydia. So I think they get some of that from there. Plus, they make connections with other purveyors. So I don't know if we've talked about it before, but I've said how that's how you get good deals on wine, where if you buy so much from certain companies, you get discounts on other things and you can charge less
Okay.
for it when you can sell more. There's all these little deals you can work out. Like, for example, like when I worked at Neta, we ordered sake, a certain amount of sake from certain purveyors, and they gave us discounts on the Japanese whiskey. And because we got discounts, we could charge a little less. And because we could charge a little less than competitors, more people would get them, and you make more money back, like things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so those are the kind of things that you have to think about in all businesses. That these kind of things where it's like cost benefit analysis, you have to weigh things. You can't just say, "Oh, we're going to start paying more for this without attaching that." And then some of the decisions you're making, "Oh, we just want this product because it's something that this group of people wants." But you have to think, if we're going to get this product, it might reduce the price of this other thing, so we'll go for that product instead. And there's also that thing where it's a loss leader. Is that something that's a typical thing in restaurants? Can you tell us a bit about that? Is that the term
What
for
what
it? Loss
what's the
leader?
expression?
Is it
I'm
loss
not.
leader? Where like it's something that they know they don't make money on, but it brings people in, and then like then those people come in and get other things. And then you're like,
I've heard about that. I'm not really sure examples of it in places that I've worked. Like for example, one place, I don't know if you're familiar with the whiskey Pappy Van Winkle, but that's really expensive, like a few thousand. I think it's like a few thousand a bottle. But we actually got a discount on it. But what we did at Neta was we sold, you could get a shot of it at like I think a slightly lower price, but you had to get it with food. So the idea was to get
okay,
people to get food, so they got a discount on that because otherwise, like we wanted to make money off food as well. I mean, as I'm sure you're aware, you make way more money off beverage than food because it's like, I mean, beverage costs in some places is like 4% or something, but then it's like I've worked in places where food costs as high as 30%, which is too high. Some of these really high end places, it goes even higher. I think I've talked a little bit about how some of these really high end restaurants, they don't make money off those restaurants. They make money from the other restaurants. Like my friend who worked at Danielle, he
okay.
said we probably make like $3 a year. Like we throw away so much, we trim off so much, all this. But you have other restaurants that have very low food costs and high volume, so that's what makes the money. And then you have a little money to fool around with where you can experiment with more creative and interesting things. It's sort of
So
like
almost the whole restaurant is a loss leader for the entire restaurant company.
yeah, or there was Ferran Adria, who's the Spanish chef. He's considered like the father of molecular gastronomy. He actually didn't make money off his food. He actually had other businesses that supported it, but he had
Mhm.
3 Michelin stars. That was the thing. But he was so passionate about what he did. He's like, if I can find ways to make other money just to support this, I will. And he actually did that, and it was really cool. He actually gave a demonstration and a lecture at CIA where I went to school, and like you could see how passionate, like he didn't want to stop talking
It's
about food.
cool.
Like it was really something. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we should do like a separate like your art we consume on some of these people on some of these things that are more like this food related. Yeah, because that's what the your we consume
Yeah.
series is food related. We haven't been to those restaurants, but we just talk about the food thing. So that might
Yeah.
be cool. Just talking about more like molecular gastronomy, something that I've just listened to a bit. I know there was that one restaurant where it was like completely pitch dark, where you're supposed to like taste the food and experience the food in different kinds of ways. So maybe we can do like a separate one talking about
Yeah.
these different ways, these more contemporary ways of like enjoying, of imbibing, and just different ways of taking in food, different ways of consuming things that I think would be good to do.
Sure.
Yeah. So anything else? Oh no. Yeah. With this one, these are some famous people, so they've done things. Do you know if there's any cookbooks or anything, classes available for the food that's made here,
I mean, I
or
know,
is it
but
stuff that they made on their shows or things like that?
well, and I mean, I know Batali had several cookbooks and he had his show, so I'm sure if you were to go back and watch some of those or check out the books, I'm sure there's either these recipes or similar stuff in there. I don't know if there's anyone specifically for this place like Felidia. I mean, there may be, but my guess is that if you were to look, you could probably find some of these recipes, or like I say, at least stuff that's pretty close. You could probably tweak a little. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think now, unless you have anything else to say about the restaurant, we can jump into the food now.
Yep.
And as I mentioned, our beautiful faces are going to go off the screen, and then we'll just be talking about the food. I'll say the names of the food, and then we just go back and forth, talk about the kind of food that's in there, and then that's just how we go. And Stephen has been kind enough to set this up where it's like you have the aperitivo or the smaller foods, and you get like the actual main dish and desserts at the end. Sometimes we talk about the wines in there, so I'm not quite sure. There's going to be wine talk in this. Is going to
Yeah, I was just gonna say I included some of the wine pairings that I had with dishes, and if I didn't get all the info on all of them, but I got as much as I could. And
be.
also, again, I apologize for the variation in photo quality, but remember, I mean, some of these one of these I went when I had like my iPhone 6, some I went when I had the iPhone 8, and some recently with the 13. So you're going to see some variation in the quality. But I mean, this is spanning, 7 years or
Yeah.
so it's not going to be exactly the same.
I'm still on the 6 Plus.
Uh,
I've seen there definitely is a difference with the camera quality and some of the technology is pretty crazy. But yeah, some of the things that happen in tech. Okay. So here we go with the first dish for Babbo Ristorante Enoteca. And the first dish here is an amuse-bouche, which is a crispy polenta and tuna. And this is one of the more recent visits that you had. So yeah,
yes.
tell us a bit. Just also amuse-bouche, tell us a bit about what that is and just this.
So amuse-bouche in French means amuse, like sort of amusement for the mouth. Now, bouche is a human mouth, gueule is an animal mouth. So an amuse-bouche is usually something a little more intricate, and then a gueule is something casual. Like an amuse-gueule might be like peanuts or something, whereas an amuse-bouche is something a little more composed. The idea is this is for humans, this is for animals. I mean, it's kind of a joke, but it's like, that's where they're going. So something to sort of wake up the palate. So this here is tuna. It was made into what appeared to be a mousseline. A mousseline is like a meat mousse, usually cream folded in. And then
Okay.
the polenta is, it looked like the way I would imagine they made this is they cooked polenta on a stove, laid it out very thin, and then actually it was thick enough that it was able to hold its shape, and then they fried it. So it came out almost like a cracker. And then they put some of the mousse in between the polenta crackers and some chives on top.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, with some of these, the good ideas that I get from these, like the plating of some of these things. So I can cook pretty well, but my plating is really subpar. I'm trying to improve on that. Um,
I find with plating, it's good to just look at a lot of other plates and sort of get inspiration. Like maybe not copy them exactly, but look at certain platings, see certain elements that you like, and maybe tweak them to your own design. Like maybe quenelle here, this on top of that. And I think if you play around with different pairings and even just try a few different layouts and then just see, okay, how does this look versus that? And
Yeah, and also as we've talked about before, getting these tools and things like that can make food in different ways. And that's what the person you're talking about, the molecular gastronomy, that's pretty much what he was doing. Just getting the typical type of dishes. He's not getting brand new ingredients, but he's breaking them down into different kinds of ways so like they hit your taste buds in different ways, the mouth feel and the experience, and temperatures and the combinations. Just finding different ways in order to actually enjoy that. And it actually does make a difference having these things kind of play together.
yeah, I mean, the term molecular gastronomy, by the way, technically just means the way temperature affects food. So, I mean, like, a chef in school made the comment, like an egg hitting a hot pan is molecular gastronomy, technically.
Okay.
But it's this term that's kind of been thrown around to talk about more intricate ideas, like different converting things to foam, making certain flavored powders that dissolve in your mouth, all this, like playing around with different textures and flavors. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because with some of these, for those of you at home might not be familiar, polenta is more of like a whole meal type. It's like porridge type of thing, but thicker. And then here in Kenya, we have this thing called ugali, which is also like sima, I think in Nigeria or some maybe Ghana areas. But it's something it's a commonly eaten thing. But you can get it thicker and thicker. Here in Kenya, like some tribes like it very thick. I prefer mine softer, not quite as loose as polenta. But now here, like you said, they probably just added a bit more flour into it, and then yeah, just did the toasting. So you probably taste like a really thick tortilla or something. I don't know. Kind of thinking what this
It's
would taste
like a
like.
cracker, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, you can see what now you put the foam and things. Yeah, so that looks interesting. Now this looks like one of the things where they can probably just switch it around. The same kind of dish can be done. That they can put the different thing, and they can put different greenery on top, different shrubbery, or instead of tuna, they can have different kinds of fish and things like that, and still maintain the same dish that people are familiar with it, but play around with the different ingredients.
Yeah, maybe do like salmon instead and do dill instead of chives or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now on to the next one here.
Sure.
We have an amuse bouche again. This is a chickpea puree with yellow peppers in an airbag. And yeah, tell us a bit about these airbags. You've mentioned them before. It was kind of a fascinating type of thing, just the way they make them. Poof them up, poof them up, poof.
Yeah, I got to see. I think the recipe may be in the Felidia cookbook. I'd have to look because we had them at Felidia as well. And
That's
I
when we
had
discussed it. Yeah.
I had some of these when I think Fortunato, because our chef after Felidia closed, he worked here for a bit, then he moved to DC. I think I might have mentioned that. So he brought a number of the dishes from Felidia, including this. And I'm trying to remember exactly how they made it. Like they wrap dough around something and they bake it, so it's this like almost like a cream puff, but a little more solid. And then you just pipe whatever you want into that. So there's chickpea flavored with herbs. My sense is probably like parsley, chives, things like that. And then just yellow peppers that were like lightly maybe roasted. My guess is probably roasted, had the skin scrape off, and just cut them up and put them on top. So that was the amuse bouche when I went with mom and friends, and then I went once on my own. Yeah.
Yeah, I like cooking with peppers, but this is as a chef in a tip. You got to put them in late
Yeah.
if you want to maintain the color, because the color bleeds away from them very, very quick. So it's a tough thing to kind of play around with.
Yeah. Not a whole lot else to say. Chickpea, but smooth, pureed with the herbs, so it's green. It's I guess you could compare it a little bit to hummus, but the flavor would be a lot different. Yeah.
Yeah, so depending on the herbs, like, not any herbs that you add to chickpeas. Chickpeas are kind of a bland thing to. It's like it's something that definitely takes on whatever you're going to put in. This is curry chickpea dish that we normally do here, because in Kenya there's a lot of influence, of course, of the Brits. So you have the fish and chips type of thing, but there's a lot bigger influence of Indian food, because a lot of the Indians came over during colonial times. So there's a lot of their spices and spicing in their dishes that are actually still eaten in part of just the cuisine in Kenya and the area. Yeah. Yeah, it's airbags. It's something that I want to try out making sometime soon. Now, here, there's another airbag dish here that we have, which is a chickpea with mint puree in a shell with lentils. Oh, it's a shell. It's airbags again, or is it just different?
I think it was the same thing. I think they said shell, so I wrote that down, but it was the same basic item. Maybe just there was some miscommunication between the front of house
Or
staff
maybe
or
because this
something.
one's actually cracked open and the other one was like the bag itself, or is that one the other one
No,
cracked open as well?
they're
Yeah,
both
both cracked open. Yeah,
they're both open.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think that was just what the server said. Similar story, only this one has mint added, so you actually taste mint in it. Lentils instead of peppers. This was in the fall, in October, so lentils tend to be big in cooler weather. That's why. Um, I thought it was a nice pairing. I mean, I like lentils, I like mint, so I thought it worked pretty well.
Okay. Yeah, as you can see, these airbags now, just if you know how to make the airbags, it's definitely many different things you can stuff in, even just for thinking of this thing. Something pureed, a bean or or seed or kernel of some sort added to it, and then you can do so many different kind of mixes just once you learn just the one thing. And there's many things that I think when you actually go into these cooking things, when you go to restaurants, think of what you're ordering. If you can learn some of these things, sometimes ask. Sometimes it's like, hey, how do you make it? Or just not even just ask, just look online. You could find ways to actually make some of these things. And I think those airbags seem to be one of those key things where once you learn how to do that, you can do a lot of different things off of that basic thing. So I think there's certain key things in cooking that once you learn that basic thing, you can branch out to a lot of other things just by adding small things to it.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're jumping through these rather fast, but sometimes we normally go longer talking about some of these things. But it's this way it goes. Like as you've seen, some of them are rather straightforward. So now the next one is romesco with bagna freida.
Yep.
And the bagna freida is a Piedmontese vinaigrette made with anchovies. And
Yep.
so this is a complimentary dish. What's the normally thinking behind this? You who's worked at the restaurant, when do they do this? Is it something like for a regular, or is it just depending on they just want to impress somebody? What's the normal thinking behind complimentary dishes?
It depends on the situation. I mean, if you come to a place a lot, you're regular, they usually will send you a complimentary drink or something. If you're a VIP, like you're the chef at a big restaurant, they'll usually send you a few different things. Certain celebrities, they'll send things. I had mentioned earlier when I sat down that I was the last floor manager at Felidia, and they're like, "Oh, that's cool. You probably
Oh,
know some
okay.
of our food, you know." And then they just thought, "Okay, let's send him this." And of course,
Oh,
you know,
that's
I usually
nice.
tip. Yeah, I usually tip well when they do. I had this. I had this with one of the entrees that we're going to discuss below. This was actually interesting. I never heard or tried this dish before. It's like I say, Piemontes. There's actually it means actually cold bath in Italian. It's basically a dip. It's made anchovies, walnuts, vinegar, olive oil. Um, you know, all that's pureed together. You can see the romesco cauliflower green. It's roasted. There's
Yeah.
some fried mint on top, some lemon supremes as well as lemon zest. Really good, really very strong flavors, but they worked very well together.
It's interesting. That looks like it could be some really good flavors walking here. And this is the thing. Now, with the different colored cauliflowers, do they have slightly different tastes? Is some stronger than the whites, or what's with that?
To me, they taste the same. I mean, I'd have to try them side by side. I think it's more just for presentation. Like a lot of places will do like green, yellow, blue, and they just do them on one plate. It just looks nice together.
Hmm. Yeah, we talked about this in the previous one. We said, where did salad come from? And it seems to be some of the origin of salad was this whole, like it's sort of saying, like with salad dressing, it was in order for them to actually store and ship vegetables for longer distances, you had to somehow do different things to them, and vinegarizing them with some sort of vinaigrette was one of the ways to preserve them for a longer time. So that would be a common thing. And then from there, now salad kind of broke out into its own section of dishes, of things like that, of cuisine. But yeah, this looks interesting. Now, with something like this, it's a complimentary dish. So is this something that they threw together in the back, or is it like something that occasionally they give to other people complimentary dishes? It's something that comes on the menu. They're testing out new things, or how does some of these things work?
Well, it depends on what they want to do. Like sometimes, like in places like this, they'll send you a pasta dish, but they'll send you like a small portion of it. In
Okay.
this case, this was actually a side dish that you can order at the time, but they just sent me a serving of it. So it
Oh,
depends, of course. Like I say, I mean, who you are, you know, what they want to send you, etc. Like usually, if like a chef of a big place comes in and they order certain dishes, they'll send them extra stuff because they want them to try everything, things like that. Yeah.
good. Yeah. And this they don't know you're a minor internet celebrity yet. They're just they're just sending you food from different kind of connections that you had there. But yeah, it's part of the family for having worked at Philadia.
Yep.
Now we have the lovely ladies here for the next picture that we have here, the next food. And this is some castelfranco lettuce salad with ricotta salata, pomegranate, and candied pecans, and a prosciutto di San Daniele 24-month, what's Doc dall'ava with figs. And pomegranate. Pomegranate. I really like that name. It's like hand grenade. This is pretty much what it's called. Like this hand grenade, and it's just the fruit, as you know, like when you open the pomegranates, it has all those tiny little kernels. I've just started figuring out like it's a really good addition to salads. Just think about your most basic salad that you have. Just add some pomegranate to it, and you'll just spice it up, because not only do you have like the effervescence of biting into the seed, but then it has a crunchiness inside. So it's a really interesting mouthfeel that you can add to them, especially if you chill them a bit before you actually put them into the salad. It's a really good addition to salads. This is something that I'm throwing out there. But yeah, tell us about these salads.
Yeah, so I actually took the pictures together. I don't think I got any pictures of each dish individually, so I just decided to post them together because the two ladies had them as well.
The
So,
lettuce is individual.
well, I'm saying but I'm saying they're two separate dishes on the menu, but I just wanted
Mhm.
to, I just took them together. So,
No, I
Castelfranco
mean
lettuce.
I meant you have a picture of the lettuce by itself.
I could find one. So
No, you do.
Castelfranco.
It's in the document. Like you
Okay,
sent me
okay.
one of just the lettuce, but yeah, it's okay.
Okay. So Castelfranco lettuce is it's a type of radicchio. It's from Castelfranco. It's a town in the north. Radicchio is typically purple. I actually ate some yesterday. But this is like it's kind of light greenish with like I guess you would say like kind of purplish streaks. It looks really cool. So it's a bitter green. Ricotta salata is it's a type of dry cheese. It's based on sheep's milk. It's from Sicily, actually. It's people compare it pecorino kind of family. It's a hard, firm, salty cheese. You usually tend to shave it thin over top. It actually means ricotta actually means recooked, and salata means salty, so salted, recooked cheese, basically. Aged at least 90 days. This was on an edition Felidia, if you recall. It's fairly strong, so you pair it with things that tend to be milder because it has a very distinct flavor of its own. Um, Pomegranate candied pecans. I think there was like a very light like lemon vinaigrette or something on top. It wasn't much of a vinaigrette though, just like to give the lettuce a little flavor. Prosciutto di San Daniele. That's one of the major prosciuttos. There's prosciutto di Parma tends to be more on the nuttier side. This is more on the sweeter side. This is made from the pork leg and sea salt. It's from the region San Daniele. It's a small village in Italy's in Friuli. That's like a northern region of Italy near the sea air. They think that there's a whole belief that the mountain air and the Adriatic Sea actually like helps cure the meat and gives it a certain flavor. Um, and then of course there's the whole that acronym that you read. There's a whole certain requirement, like the pig has to be raised in one of 10 regions. It has to be raised using certain traditions, and then it has to be made in San Daniele. So that's like it's that whole thing of like you can't call it that unless it goes by this. Like the example I always bring up is it can't be champagne unless it's from Champagne and is made of those grapes and is made in method champenoise. Yeah.
And with some of these things, it's definitely true. Some of these things, like you can't just make like blue cheese anywhere. Like there's certain places that have certain fungi that will actually react with things. There's certain certain plants and things like that the pigs will eat expressed in a certain place that will create the actual food in that particular way. So that's something that's completely common. So there is something to that. That's why I kind of think the protections might not be that needed, because if something can be made at that level with that specificity at that place, it's still only going to come from that place at that level. You can still kind of differentiate yourself from it. Just like if someone makes mac and cheese, there's all sorts of mac and cheese everywhere. But then it's like you don't have to necessarily say we're the only people who can make mac and cheese to find yourself to way to differentiate yourself by doing like a 4-cheese mac and cheese or some homemade pasta in a kind of shape that like hasn't been had before, that really grabs the cheese in a different way. Like this, you initially coat the bottom of the thing with one, so it's like there's some smooth cheese and some crumbly cheese. You can do all these kind of things with it without necessarily having to have a protection against it. But that's probably just like my bias against like the state and governments and things like that, kind of seeping into it.
I always thought like the story behind Roca for the blue cheese was interesting because it's ewe's milk, so sheep, but it's aged in cliffs by the sea. And I was reading it's not just the sea air, but there's also a certain bacteria that grows in that soil that actually gives the blue mold. So it's like it has to be in that area by the sea and all that to develop that flavor. Yeah.
Yeah, like it really just, you could do the same exact thing, even get the same sheep, and it just won't be the same if you just take it to like Rift Valley in Kenya and try to do it there. So that's the stuff that you don't really need a protection for. That's just like the stuff. It's just that ish. So yeah, you can just enjoy it.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, we've talked about sort of the salads with the lettuce. Just step up your lettuce game. Don't just iceberg it, which is just crispy water, as someone told you. Like you can just do these different kinds of things with it, and yeah, it's a base for something, but definitely something else. Then the figs, I'm not quite sure. I can't even really remember having raw figs. It seems like I'm always just like the fig Newton type of thing. I can't even think of the taste of raw figs.
I like fresh figs a
fresh,
lot.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. They're in season certain times of year though. I'm trying to remember if it's like I think it's like fall time and like spring or something. I know like certain places will get them in fresh those times of year, and then the rest of the time you use them, they're either dried, candied, whatever.
Yeah. Oh, so yeah, that was with the ladies for that one. No, this is interesting. It's interesting. This next dish looks like really jumping off of the plate, jumping off of the picture. And this is a crudo de mare, and this is a raw salmon, tuna and branzino, then puffed rice with Mediterranean salsa, and a fresh horseradish on top.
Sure. So you can probably tell by the name crudo means raw, di mare of the sea. So the idea is that it's different fish. Branzino, which is milder, salmon, and then tuna. So different fat content, different flavor profile. The Mediterranean salsa, you can tell here, it's sea beans. There's a watermelon radish shaved thin. There's some puffed rice, both white and black. And then there's a little bit of cucumber too, a little bit of cucumber, a little bit of tomato, I want to say. And then underneath there's a sauce. It's based, I want to say, off creme fraiche. It's similar, maybe a little like lemon for acidity. So you got a few different things. You have the raw fish. You have a little bit of salt to enhance the flavor of the fish. Then you have these other items and then the crunch of the rice. So it's a really nice dish.
Okay, sea beans. I'm seeing the actual ones that kind of look like green beans, and I'm seeing these other kind of things like a heart, but it looks like a walnut, but it's like a heart shape. So I'm guessing it's the green bean ones and not the Mexico mint sea beans. What are these other things? Weirdness. Brown hamburger, true. It's called brown hamburger, true sea beans. Anyway, that's not it for that one. Yeah, the crudo stuff. Now this is the thing. If meat is made clean, I know this is like the beef tartare, which is just like raw meat just chopped really thin. How do you tell which meats can be had raw and which ones should not be had raw?
I mean, typically it's texture. Like you cut up the meat that's like kind of tender on its own. So like for example, you could use tenderloin. I'm trying to think like you wouldn't use chuck or something because the certain cuts of meat would just be tougher. Like chuck is usually ground and mixed with other stuff to make burgers because it's very lean, it's tougher. So it's like it's either ground to make burger. You could eat it as a steak too, but it's going to be tough unless you cook it like very gently. So it's typically it's meat or fish that's tender enough that you can just chew on it on your own. Like I'm trying to think of like there's certain fish textures you just wouldn't have raw. Like I think the texture would just be too strange. And it also depends on the type of fish and how it's handled. Because I know with certain fish like swordfish, there's issues with parasites and things. Like you can have them raw, but they have to be handled very well. Same with tuna. And with these, I think all these fish just work well raw. I'm not crazy about branzino personally. I think it's kind of a boring fish. I don't know. Like the Italians, Italian Americans love it. Like every Italian place serves it, but I don't know. It's just like a bland white fish. But I don't know. People order it.
It's like the tilapia of Europe.
Yeah, but it's like it's one of those things that you put it on the menu, people order it. And Felidia, we did the whole branzino, and we'd like fillet a table side, so people thought that was cool. And
Yeah. So with the meat, it's not inedible if you have them raw. It's just that with certain meats, if it's not fresh, there's a high chance you can get ill, but not from the meat started going bad and things like so. That's the prime thing, or parasites. Yeah, for most definitely like the parasites in certain things. And some meat is a lot more slimy, as you mentioned. I can think of some fish that the meat is just very, very super slimy, where it's just you'd have to cook some of that. I don't know, mucus sounds like too much of a term, but there's some stuff that has more of a slimy mouthfeel to it, I think. But then people have oysters, which is just essentially just all slime. So it depends. It's a variation of things, yeah.
Well, I was gonna say too. I mean, you also have to know which animals have which foodborne illnesses. Like chickens are extremely unsanitary. That's a joke I always make about how like people say pigs are disgusting. I'm like, no, pigs compared to chickens are relatively,
Yeah.
Like the last case of like pigs can get trichinosis. It's a worm. It's a parasite. But the last reported case in the U.S. was like the 70s. But I mean, like 1 in 3 chickens has salmonella. So it's like you're not gonna have chicken raw. Like I mean, I know like Anthony Bourdain went to Japan and had chicken medium rare. And like maybe if you raised the chicken yourself, you kept an eye on it, you know what it was fed, that'd be fine. But some of these chickens raised in pens on top of each other. No, I would not.
I would not risk that. So yeah, the stress that's going through they will literally eat anything. My chicken story is like we had some chickens in one of the places we were living here, and then we caught like some baby mice that was like we found them. I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna like just take these mice out. I was like, okay, I'm gonna kill these baby mice, but what am I gonna do with them? The mom's like abandoned them. Like I can't leave them like in my closet or like a place where people are living. So we take them out, and somebody who was living in the same compound, he was raising some chickens. He just took the little dustpan I had them on. He just threw them on the ground. The chickens just run in like peck, peck, peck. He just ate up the little baby mice. It was like, oh man, chickens will eat anything. But yeah. Now the next one is we talked about Stephen is human foie gras. If anything, I might be human burrata. And then here we have the next dish that we have here. It's is it the mozzarella di bufala di campagna with no, is this the one with it? No, this seems to be something else because I'm seeing on the menu there's this, but I'm not. You didn't put the listing for this, but it looks like some mozza with some tomatoes and mushrooms.
No, if you scroll down a bit, it's the warm lamb tongue with tomato, and there's an egg. It's a 3-minute egg.
That's an egg?
Yeah.
I thought that was boof. Oh, no. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so the warm lamb tongue with tomato concassé and 3-minute egg. So apologize to the mozzarella for confusing it with it. But yeah, paired with a vespa bianco.
Sure. So lamb tongue was cooked. I want to say it was seared and then braised by the texture. You notice the marks on it, but it's very tender. Like you cut through it very easily. 3-minute egg, it looked like it was poached, but it was seared on the outside. So I don't know if maybe there's some combination where they poach it lightly to hold its shape, and then maybe finish it in the pan. I'm not sure. I haven't seen that method before. And tomato concassé, for those who don't know, it's something you learn at culinary school. Basically, you take a tomato, you score the skin, you scrape out the seeds, and then you drop it in water very briefly and take it out. And then the idea is that it loosens the skin so you can peel it off. So it's just
hot water, like boiling water.
Yeah. So, but it's very briefly because the idea is you don't really want to cook the tomato. You just want to you score the skin, you cut out the seeds, and then when you drop it in, it loosens the skin enough that you can just peel it off. So you just have the flesh. So if you want that like very smooth interior, so it's very tender, there's no resistance when you cut it. And then I want to say this was a salsa verde, some herbs cut up mixed with oil and some arugula. Arugula, of course, peppery flavor kind of goes well with the other items.
Okay.
And then for the wine pairing, so this is Vespa Bianco. Vespa, you can probably tell by the bottle, means wasp in Italian, means white wasp actually. It's a Chardonnay. It's more oak fermented. So this was interesting. We were talking last time about the Tower of Power and wine pairings. This is actually a heavier white paired with red meat, but you figure lamb tongue because it's lamb, it's a younger animal. But the white is a heavier white because it's oak fermented, so it has more tannins. It has sort of a buttery dairy kind of element to it. It pairs well with the lamb tongue. And this is definitely I remember at Felidia, this was one of the whites we had by the glass, and if people asked for a heavier white, this was pretty much the go-to one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, with lamb, we've talked about how this animal has it has a very strong taste. It's hard to really explain. It seems to be even stronger than at least the sheep. The full-grown animal has even a stronger taste than the goat, which is a typical type of thing that we have in Kenyan cuisine. But we goat a lot more than we do the lamb. And yeah, so even with lamb, it's younger. But now with the tongue, how much of the taste actually is in the tongue? And of course, it's also now a different sort of feel too. It's more of a rubbery, looser texture too. It's like a mix. It's like beef liver, kind of a mix of muscle and liver type of consistency.
Yeah, because you think about it, the tongue is a muscle, so it tastes a bit like the lamb. Like if you were to have like the lamb chop posted below, there's a little bit of that flavor, but there's also the iron flavor because a lot of organ meats tend to have that kind of distinct iron flavor. Like if you have beef heart versus like a steak, you can tell the difference even though they look very similar. So there's that kind of profile, but it's also very tender and it's cooked through all the way. So that's the best I could describe it. I mean, it was good. I mean, it's one of those, like, I'm not exactly sure how I would sell it to somebody.
Yeah, because you're gonna have the blood in it. It's going to sit in a different way. It's not going to be as many fibers. Where like muscles is only like veins moving through that carry majority of it, but then like the organs will have like different sorts of deposits of fluids and things like that into it.
Well,
Yeah.
with muscles too, you have to be careful because, like with steak, for example, I learned in school that there's actually adrenal glands, and the thing is, the more stressed out the animal gets, or the more of those there are, because it adapts to the animal being stressed.
Okay.
And my butcher instructor basically said, he's like, you cut out those adrenaline glands. He's like, you eat that in a steak, it's the most bitter thing you'll ever taste.
I think for now we should propose that butchering should be called butching. I think the LGBTQ plus people might be against that, but I think that would be a good term for butching. But yeah, this is something that I also suggest if you're familiar with foods, get more familiar with the knowledge of the animal. And that could just be a key thing, a key difference with farm grown and like free range type of animals and things like that, like more like open ranged, because it's just some stress of animals living in enclosed areas in certain places that actually gets into the food. That's also why there's something to do with like the way they're actually slaughtered. If you're slaughtering them and they actually have the knowledge of it, they get the fear, they pump the actual adrenaline into it. Now, this is something that I've mentioned. We've talked about how a lot of people who are very into environmentalism and these things like that will talk about, oh, we need to save animals, we need to stop doing this to animals. But then they themselves will live in certain lifestyles and organizations that has these kind of things to their bodies. Like imagine these people are just freaking out every single thing is like the end of the world type of thing. Some of the people are just signaling, but with some of these people, that's actually pumping elements and adrenaline and hormones into their system, and it's actually poisoning them by having that kind of environment.
Yeah.
So we are all animals. Humans are animals, and we're just a subset of the different animals on this spaceship Earth. So yeah, I think just understanding and having better knowledge of our fellow animals out there and having some care about how they're treated and also what you put into your system and how you treat yourself is just a more positive thing. And for me, one of the key things of it is, yes, going down and sitting in a restaurant, having some good food, but also being able to be that person, to be able to make good food for yourself or make good food for other people. So I think most definitely, if you've been putting that off, get out there and start learning how to make some different foods and go outside of your basic sort of thing and try some lamb tongue. Try something different. If you're listening to this, you can order lamb tongue, or you can go find a butchering expert, and they can actually give you some access to it. They might not have it there, but they might be able to know somebody who can send it to you. Just find out some of these things.
Yeah, and if you watch, there was a video of Anthony Bourdain speaking, and he actually gave Batali a lot of credit for helping to sort of repopularize these organ meats, because what I've talked about before about how here we produce so much, you can throw away the organs and just eat the good stuff. But he was making the point that because Batali was a celebrity chef and people trusted him, when he started serving the tongue, sweetbreads, whatever, people were like, okay, we trust Mario, we'll give it a shot. And then those things started becoming popular again. So if you come to this restaurant as well as others, you'll commonly see organ meats, but because of the effort of him doing that, it helped make like I mean, I wouldn't say the mainstream appreciates them again, but I think they started to come back more in style than they were for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Some of these things probably never really be mainstream. It's just like, it's weird how some things just, it's again, it just goes to the weird thing. Someone would be like, okay, that's an organ meat, I'm never going to eat that. I'm like, a chicken gizzard, I would never eat that. And then they go and just eat chicken nuggets. And I'm like, that's just kind of weird to eat like the pink paste chicken nuggets. I'm like, that's kind of different. I mean, there's probably gizzards somewhere in that pink paste that you're eating there. Like
Well,
that's one of the things that might be in there.
I think of what my old chef said to me when I talked about trying oxtail the first time. I said, "Am I really eating an animal's tail?" He goes, "Have you had Taco Bell?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You've eaten worse than an animal's tail."
Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff in that stuff. Like the actual regulations against what can be put in there to be considered mincemeat is
Yeah.
it's pretty shocking for some of the things. Okay, well, I guess, but some of the things are still good. Like I'm someone who will eat intestines, livers, kidneys, and other. So it's just a different part. So it's like the trimmings. It's a whole mix of things.
Sure.
Okay. Now the next one, it's kind of a typical Italian dish. I think this definitely did come up when we were talking about Felidia.
Mm-hmm.
This is a cacio de pere ravioli.
Sure. So this is the start of the pasta section. This of course Fortunato brought from Felidia here because that was sort of a thing where when he came there, some people were complaining, oh, the menu's too similar to Felidia, but at the same time, those were popular dishes, and he saw it as like, well, why don't I bring them? And if people like them, keep them on the menu. If not, get rid of them. But I mean, this was on the menu Felidia 15 years, and it always sold. So when Mom came, she decided to get this. So again, you can tell it's cacio e pere. It's actually it's a play on two dishes. There's a dish cacio e pepe, which means cheese and pepper, and then there's pecorino e pere, which is pear and pecorino cheese. That's the sheep milk cheese. So inside there's pear and ricotta cheese. Then it's cooked in a butter which has pear juice in it for flavor, and then there's some black pepper and ricotta and pecorino cheese grated over top. So it's that sort of dry. That dry, saltier sheep's milk with pepper, and it really works. The flavors all work really well together. This is one of these dishes I highly recommend. I mean, I've eaten it so much I won't order it again, but I definitely recommend it if you haven't tried it. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is those different things where it's like, hey, just add some fruits. Yes, this whole thing people say, oh, tomatoes are fruits, but they're not. They're essentially vegetables. Like you kind of just say they're kind of in that thing. Yes, eggplants and things like this. Cucumbers technically a fruit, but I mean outside of that, I'm talking about just like the fruit type of things and things that are more generally understood as fruits. Think about adding those to like your typical like meal dishes. They don't just have to be desserts. They don't just have to be shakes. They don't just have to be things they eat at the end. But think about adding those to your foods. If you need something to be sweetened or things like that, instead of just adding sugar or honey, think of adding a fruit that can make like you can candy a fruit down to it, or you can just use like some zest from it. Like from now, the typical thing that I do is I always have orange peels in the fridge. You get like a little micro grater. There's so many different things you can use this like orange zest in, like and things like that. So it's just a typical type of thing that you can actually do. And also for those of y'all who are also trying to drink more water in your life, another good thing to do is like infusing water with different kinds of things. So you don't have to go to like juices and things. That's another chef tip. Just get some slices of stuff, or one of the ways you can actually do this, use the full hog type of thing. Now, when you're talking about fruits, if you like coring your fruits or peeling them before you eat them, you can take the core and the peels and just leave them in some water, put it in the fridge, and you can just let it sit there for like 24 hours, and normally like steeps into the water and just gives like a slight taste with it. I find it to be very flavorful, but I've also done diets where I've reduced my sugar intake. So for some people who are used to like the more like highly sugared things, it might take some time to adjust to that lower taste, but that taste is still in there and the flavor is still very strong from doing those things. Yeah.
Yeah, I like this dish too because it's not overly sweet. Like I like fruit and dishes too, but it's like you don't want it to taste like dessert either. And I think this balances that well in the sense that there is pear, it's a little sweet, but you also get the ricotta and you also get the sheep, which has a kind of like funky flavor, and the pepper adds a little bit of spice. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned with dessert. Now I'm thinking, could you do like some sort of ravioli, dessert raviolis, maybe like a chocolate-based thing where it's like, or you can even prepare it in different, instead of boiling, maybe you can, I don't know, but if you just get like a pastry, a thin pastry, and then you bake it that way, or you deep fry. I'm trying to think of maybe different ways you can do this. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, there was a I don't know if we talked about it, but there was a chocolate ravioli at Felidia. I want to say it was with squash or pumpkin or something, and it had cookie grated over top. So that was a little on the sweeter side, but it wasn't. The chocolate also, remember, can be kind of bitter because if you don't put too
Yeah.
much sugar in it, it's more so it's not overly. It doesn't taste like a chocolate bar. Yeah.
Yeah, dark chocolate is, yeah, you can get like the 95% dark, 98% dark chocolate is really, it's a tart taste. It's almost coffee-like, actually.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
Thomas Keller in one of his recipes talks about he adds coffee beans to a certain sauce because it gives a little bit of bitterness, and that gives it a different flavor.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay, so now moving on to the next dish here. We have a fazzoletti, which is a rabbit mushroom ragu with a truffle pesto, and then nduja sausage. This came up before. I was like, guys, that sounds like a more of a Spanish type of thing because there's no J in it. But this is a region in Italy, right? That you told us about. And it was like some weird type. Yeah. So tell us about this.
So fazzoletti, I think it translates as something like handkerchief or something. It has this kind of like ribbon kind of look to it. Some people actually will substitute it for instead of using lasagna noodles, it'll be a different end product, but you can still use it in a similar way because they're like long and flat and they have these rigid ends. I mean, um, ragu just means meat sauce, so rabbit mushroom, a bit of tomato, truffle pesto. There's a little bit of that thrown in. It wasn't overly prominent. And then andouille was a sausage from Calabria in the south. They think it's a bastardization of andouille, which is a French sausage. Because notice the name is kind of similar, but the spelling is different, and that's a regional dialect that's not standard Italian.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more of it's like a corned beef type of sausage type of thing. It's not necessarily that solid. It's like do people eat them raw? Yeah, I mean not raw, but not cooked, but it's just like the way it's served. Yeah. So yeah, this is interesting. And the rabbit again, this is another. I think it's a slept-on animal, and it's a very little meat on the actual thing. It's almost like I'd say of the mammals that we eat, it's more like the quail type of thing where it's like really small. Where like in some cases I've seen people just eat even the bones of the rabbit because they just like break apart and you can get some like the bone marrow. It's like it's not going to be like inedible for you to just crunch through the bones. Certain parts of the animal, of course, it's just a rather tiny animal. Yeah. So this one, rabbit mushroom ragu. It's like chopped up rabbit, or it's like mixed together. But you said ragu, so it's like the sauce and it's like put in, so it's a little diced rabbit and mushrooms put in the sauce, and then it's like it's stuffed into and then it's also, is it ragu on top? What's the
ragu just means meat sauce, so it's
the ragu is on top. So what's inside the?
Oh, there's nothing in the pasta itself because the pasta itself is
no,
shaped
it's slices. I'm sorry, I was thinking these are raviolis for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe because that green thing is that the green under? I'm seeing this picture here. It looks like there's like green inside the thing, but you said it's those layer type of things, like the lasagna type of sheets. So maybe it's just like the pesto kind of. It's a pesto has kind of dissolved a bit into the ragu, so it looked like it was. To me, it looked like it was something inside, like you're seeing it through the actual pasta, but it was the other way around.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, interesting. Yeah, that's also with like the Asian food, like the lo meins or the different ones. Some of them are a lot wider and things like that. So there's also a wide range of the things that they have with that. And the next one we have here is a mint love letters with a spicy lamb sandwich. And this is also paired with an agliniccio. No, aglianico.
Aglianico.
Aglianico. Okay, yes. The letters were coming one at it's a dyslexia instead of like dyslexia, but it's the letters coming one at a time.
So this is love letters. You can tell it's just a play. It's a type of ravioli. The lamb sausage is inside. There's actually the mint is the puree on top. You can see the green. A little grano padano cheese grated over top. Grano padano, for those who don't know, it's similar to Parmigiano Reggiano. It's not exactly the same though. It's aged a little quicker. It's probably, I guess I would say, yeah, it's a little subtler. It's a little softer. Typically. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say they're interchangeable. I mean, because they're different side by side. But I think with the Bastianiches, they prefer that to Parmigiano Reggiano, so that's served over a lot of their pastas. Aglianico, it's an Italian red wine. You can probably tell by the name. It's on the sort of the earthier side, so it pairs well with the lamb. It's grown in the southern region of Italy, mostly Campania. That's if you picture the shape of Italy. It's I guess where you'd say like the front part of the shin is. That some of my family came from there. That Aglianico, Sangiovese, and Nebbiolo are considered like the three great Italian red wines. People have even compared it to Barolo. They've called it the Barolo of the South because it has a complex flavor. Like Barolo is interesting because you can get fruit, you can get leather, you can get like crushed rocks, like you can get all this different stuff going on in one wine. Aglianico is kind of similar in that sense.
Okay, so we have an entirely separate video talking about wines with our friend Laura and the different series that we have. I know great people. She's telling us about natural wines and just wines in general and all these other things with wines. We got a bit into like how they get things. So when you say there's something like leather in the whole process of the actual wine, like I'm thinking it's not like strips of leather because we're just talking about infusing water with different things. They're not like putting like strips of leather into the barrels to get like the leather taste of it. So when they
No.
say something like leather, how does that come into, or does it just, is it just like this? Because the smell has a big part of taste. So is it just like the taste that kind of is invoked by smelling leather is somehow a taste that's in there? Like when they say something like leather, a taste of leather comes in wine. Is there leather used in the process of preparing this
No.
wine somewhere? So what would that come from?
So I mean, the flavor and smell of wine, it has a lot to do with the type of grape, where it's grown, the terroirs they call it. So that's like the soil type, the climate, all those things. And with a lot of the older world wines, you tend to get a lot more of those type of elements. The new world wines tend to be very fruity. So if you have a Cabernet Sauvignon from California, it'll pretty much always smell like cherries or something. But then if you get something from France, it might smell like black pepper. It might smell like leather. So like if you walk into like a tanner's shop, or like I remember at the county fair as a kid, there'd be these little stores that would sell leather. Like when you walk in, you get that smell right away. It smells a little bit like that. I remember my old sommelier used to say crushed rocks. So if you picture like the stream flowing, like there's that certain smell in the air from the rocks breaking up. Yeah, there's stuff like that. So again, that's the result of the soil, what's in the soil, how long it's aged, grape variety, all those things.
Yeah. Because they also have like the wineskins. I don't even drink anymore, but I want to get one of these like old timey wineskins. Just like walk
Yeah.
around. It's kind of just looks like a cool thing. Maybe just do that. Put water into it. But yeah. Um, so with these ones, like when you're picking the wine here, were they suggesting the wines that you have? But Stephen has a background where he was almost when he was still working in the food service industry, they actually suggested he should get into becoming a sommelier, but he actually decided to just go more to the manager side of it. So is this something that you kind of just know off the top of the head? We've talked about this in previous times, but at a restaurant, you can always ask for which wine goes with which dishes that you're having, and they normally have somebody, especially at a restaurant like this, they'll have somebody to suggest what you can have with it, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I kind of go either way. Like if I'm not sure, I'll ask. Usually, I kind of make my own judgment, but sometimes I'll ask, or if like let's say there's a sommelier around, sometimes I'll ask just out of curiosity to see like what they would say. Um, I know like if you do the chef's tasting, they decide them for you. But you know, you kind of leave it up to their judgment. But I mean, I don't know. I kind of go either way. It depends what I feel like doing, I suppose.
Hmm. Yeah, and what the love letter thing, they kind of look like flowers. This is something I don't know why this came to mind, but there's something like you should be suspicious about, like the relationships when, in general, for women to show that you like a woman, for they demand, or there's a request, or there's some kind of desire for them to show you kill something beautiful and bring its corpse to them in order for them to actually enjoy it, because that's what the flowers are, like dead genitals of plants to present them to a woman to show that you really care about them. But so why love letters instead of something more about the flowers, or is it because of the romance type of aspect of it?
I'm not sure. I didn't ask. I mean, I haven't heard this name applied to pasta. I guess it was just something they wanted to do. I'm not really sure.
Okay.
Uh,
Luckily, luckily. Now, moving on to the next dish here. This is a nice plating again. I'm really, I mean, I'm a fan of green, especially because I cook and I understand like when you start cooking with green, in order to maintain this bright green thing, some veg that you'll use will have that originally in there. There's ways to get sauces and reductions to maintain it in there, but whenever you start cooking veg, the green only seeps out of it. So I'm
yeah.
always excited to see these kind of like bright greens that you have here. Now this is a citrus and fennel dusted sweetbreads, and it's a
Wait,
piccata sauce and
wait.
peas.
You skipped over the squab liver. There's a beef cheek and squab liver.
Is there? Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry, I saw that
That's
there.
all right.
Okay, so that's a beef cheek and squab liver ravioli, and this is with the grana padano cheese on top, and with this wine, which is an Orla Ricci, Il Sangiovese.
Sure. So I had this when I came a while back. I posted the two photos, one with the cheese, one without. It's usually they offer to grate it over top. You can say no. I mean, I usually get it. I guess if you have some aversion to cheese, maybe you could say no, but that doesn't happen too often. Beef cheeks, so they braise the beef cheeks. The squab liver, you can imagine squab is like wood pigeon, so it's very small. The liver is similar to chicken liver or something if you've had that. That's inside the pasta. It's almost like a tortellini type shape, and then cooking the sauce. I want to say I'm not 100% sure what the sauce is. I think it's kind of like a jus, almost like a reduction of the sauce that the beef cheeks were cooked in. And then there's some truffle grated over top, as well as some herbs. Yeah, I've had this twice. It's a really good dish. I highly recommend it. And then this is the Sangiovese grape. Sangiovese, for those who don't know, that's from the north. Those who have seen Silence of the Lambs was made famous. Chianti. Chianti is made from Sangiovese. A lot of people ask for Chianti because they think of that scene. But Chianti is a particular region. Sangiovese is just the grape more generally. A little more on the fruity side. Not entirely. I mean, there is some, you could say, earth element as well. It's usually it's sort of widespread. I mean, it's most common in central Italy, but there's also some in Sicily as well. If you have Brunello, it's made from that. Brunello di Montalcino. It's it's not super aromatic. People often smell sour red cherries. There's earthy aromas. There's even tea smells. Yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff.
Okay. Hmm.
It's a good like middle of the road wine. Like it's not like too light. It's not too heavy. So it goes with like because this dish because it's a ravioli and it's richer meat, but it's not like I wouldn't pair this with like a heavy steak or something. Yeah.
Oh. Um, okay, just take a quick little pause here. At 1:12. Oh, pause. Okay, on the dishes I'm seeing here in the document, under the wine it says beef chicken squab liver ravioli. So is this like the one where it's like it looks similar to the love letter one?
Well, because I have let me see here because in the document I have let me see
Because I'm
because
saying okay, so
because I
it's
have I
there's a aglianico
yep
that's actually there, and then there's a picture of ravioli,
yep
and I thought that was the love letter ones, right?
the love letter are they look like ravioli with the green puree and the tomato and cheese on top. And then the squab liver ravioli is the one they look like tortellini with cheese on top.
So okay, so the squab liver is the one below it. So there's it's back to back. Like
Yeah. Yeah,
those are
sorry,
two
maybe the
different dishes.
formatting, yeah.
No, wait, what? Oh,
The love
because
let
that's why. Okay, so you see, that's what I was saying when before when we were talking about the. Oh, that's why I did the mistake. Before when we were talking about the fazzoletti, I was looking at the picture of the ravioli.
okay.
That's why I was like, oh, like what's inside? Because you're like, oh no, they're like, oh no, that looks like it's on top. So that is stuff that's actually inside the
Yeah.
ravioli. Okay,
Yeah.
so at least I wasn't completely just like butchering like the ravioli people. Okay, I see the mistake that I made.
Okay.
Okay, and that's why I was asking because like there because the fazzoletti then the you see because when you're talking about the mint love letters, oh yeah, so the mint love letters. What?
The
Wait.
mint love letters, they look like ravioli. They're flat. They have the green on top. That's the mint.
Okay, that's the one. That's why I was saying that the green looks like it's inside. So that actually is green
Yeah.
inside. Okay. And then the next one is that one. Okay, so let's get back
All right.
into it.
Sure.
Um, 14. 26. Okay, so we had a bit of a we had to do a bit of a talk with Stephen because I was making a mistake there. But when we had the pictures on the screen, back when I was mentioning like, okay, what's that? Looking inside, that actually is the mint ravioli because we were talking about the fazzoletti. I had scrolled down to the picture of the mint ravioli, and it was like, okay, that's the mint was actually the one that's actually inside the raviolis. And
Yeah.
what I was talking about as the love letter type of thing Yeah, no, the love letters, it's more of like the love letters because they're actually together. So maybe there's something in that. That's why I was saying like the flour type of thing.
Yeah.
And the thing that actually looks like flour ravioli is kind of a little shell type of thing that looked in. Now that was the sorry, that was a beef cheek and squab liver ravioli
Yeah.
that we just discussed in
Yeah.
passing here. So that's why I was wondering, like, why didn't they go with a flour name? So if you saw the ravioli picture on the screen, that doesn't look like a flour. That's why I was talking about flour there. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, that seems like a good one. I'm liking that shape. That's what I was wondering. Like whatever this flower shape type of thing is, that's a good shape for raviolis. Probably a bit more difficult to make them this way. Yeah, maybe just like do a little fold type of thing. But I think it's worth it for the look and things like that. And I'm also kind of I like how like the ravioli they don't like put like so much on it. It's like just like a few pieces, only like 6 to 7 pieces at most. Like and then of course when we talked about for Lydia with the cacio pepe that they had, the cacio pere that they had there, it's like these massive ones. It was like 2 or 3, and you kind of had enough of them. But yeah, so there's different kind of things with the ravioli. But yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I highly recommend this dish. It's on the menu regularly. I've had it twice. I definitely recommend it. Again, one of those I wouldn't order again because I've already tried it twice and I want to try different things. But if you come in, I highly recommend it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you said again, this is like the different like sweetbreads and whole hog type of thing, or the cheek and things like this get different ways. So yeah,
Yep.
this is just different ways to get in the different parts of the animal in there, and it's yeah really good on Chef Batelli for trying these things. Well, yeah, now on to the next one. This is the green that I was talking about again. Also set up with really happy with the greenness, the bright greenness of this, and now we're back at the citrus and fennel dusted sweetbreads with the piccata sauce and peas. And
Sure.
I said somebody, yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So this dish, I had it on my own when I went with Mom and Company. The two ladies got it, and then when I went with Christine recently, I got it as well. I really like this dish a lot.
Plating's excellent.
Yeah, sweetbreads, for those who don't know, it's the thymus gland of the veal. It only exists in the younger animal. When the animal ages, it actually disappears. I'm not sure if I think there's flour. There's flour. It's not crispy enough to be cornstarch in the breading. There's a little bit of fennel. My guess is probably fennel pollen or something grated. Probably some citrus zest. Piccata sauce, for those who don't know, it's typically lemon, butter, and capers. Typically, you do like piccata alla milanese, where you pound pork thin and then you bread it, fry it, and then you serve it with that sauce. And then you can see here too, there's also just very green items. It's big springtime. I mean, you have the peas here. You have a light pea puree on the bottom, and then some pea shoots on top. A really nice dish for sure.
It's kind of like how they do. It's a country steak where they kind of do that as well. It's like beat it down and bread it a bit and fry it.
Yeah, I mean every country has some version of that. Like I mean, when we talked about seasonal, you figure the schnitzel. I mean, the schnitzel was
Yeah.
basically copied from that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but that looks good.
Yeah, this has actually been on. I've seen the sweetbreads on the menu every time I've been there. I don't know. I guess it's a very popular dish, so people keep ordering it. I mean, like I said, I've tried it 3 times, so another dish I
Yeah.
highly recommend. Yeah.
I'm thinking, what would the challenge be to make a dish like this? Because I'm really liking the plating and the colors and mixing the different kinds of greens in there. It looks really good. Do you know what region particularly it's from? It's like a different mix of things.
Not 100% sure. I mean, sweetbreads are a little bit involved. Like you have to pull off a membrane. I think you soak them in milk.
Okay.
And then you dust them either cornstarch or flour and fry them. Some people have almost compared it to like little bites of like chicken that you fry, but it's more delicate. It does have a unique flavor too. Works well with a lot of things for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is the second suggestion one. I mean, this is let's go to the restaurant, try out everything. There's been like at least 2 or 3 actual big suggestions to try out if you haven't been there. But yeah. Now moving on to the next dish here, we have some fennel dusted sweetbreads and some duck bacon with sweet and sour onions and membrillo vinaigrette.
Yep. So this was from the first time I went. This was in 2017. I was trying to remember the year. I figured it was around then. Similar preparation, breaded and fried duck bacon. It's the duck breast, cured and sliced very thin. You cook it. It'll crisp up enough so it's similar to bacon. Sweet and sour onions. You could probably tell there's some scallion and there's also some red onion cooked in vinegar. If you remember the foie gras dish from Casamono was kind of similar to this. Like there were a few different onion preparations. It was kind of similar to this. And membrillo is actually it's made from quince, the fruit, apple, pear family. Turns deep orange when you cook it. There's actually even it's typically served as a paste, but this is actually fermented. They make a vinegar out of it, so they make a vinegar which they serve on the basis of the dish, and then there's a little bit of an infused oil too. I don't remember which flavor, but the acidity kind of cuts through the fattiness of the duck and sweetbreads. Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, this is now just taking something that's typical, like duck breast. There's a very basic way. It's normally just like the duck breast itself, cut with like the thin layer of skin over it. It's normally like grilled or fried, like oven roasted or fried. It's just like a typical way to do it. So this is interesting seeing the different kinds of ways. And also when we were talking about Dolly Varden, they also had the different kind of platings, doing different kind of slices. So it's interesting to see it presented in a different way like this.
Yep. Yeah, this was on the menu a while ago. If it were still around, I'd recommend it. It's interesting because the casa mono dish with the foie gras later reminded me of that, the different onion preparations and the sort of the acidity on the bottom. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, there was that with it's like the five different onions in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And this is like we're already in the. This is like the main dishes. So is this? It look how big is this? It looks like it might be small. It's like an entire duck breast they put in this. Makes it except the bacon or
It's
what's the
it's not a
size of
whole
this dish?
it's not a whole duck breast. There's a few pieces of sweetbread. I'm trying to think of a comparison for you. Maybe the size of like a filet mignon or something. Like it's not huge. Like there's a few pieces of sweetbreads kind of stacked up like that, and then there's the duck bacon is just like a few slices. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, exactly. Okay, so that's what the big chunkier meats are, the
Yeah.
chunky meat. But yeah, and then as you mentioned before with Italian food, like you're going to have like separate parts. So in different kind of places, they might put this on the same plate with like some rice on the side or something, and then like a bit of like cauliflower and like on the side, like things like that. But no, as you will see, they come with different plates. So it's not necessarily like the tapas or anything, but it's like separate plates highlighting just that primary part of the dish that you're actually going to actually enjoy.
Yep.
Yeah. See a duck and then the fennel and then the vinaigrette. Yeah, again, this is some interesting taste taste combinations of getting kicked off in my mind. Like, yeah, you mentioned Babbo for some time, so yeah, it's definitely some things where there's some interesting things going on here. Okay, next we have Chris over here, Chris Vella. He also has a channel. You can check that out. He just started a business that he's getting into. Good luck to him on that. But you can see him looking at this meal. Get yourself a dude that looks at this grilled quail with cranberry and beans like Chris Vella is looking at this here. This grilled radicchio, fig compote, and fried sage. So yeah.
This was really nice. Andrea got it when she ate there as well. It's quail, those who don't know, the small bird. Cranberry beans, they're called that because of the way they look. They don't taste like cranberries, but the appearance. Radicchio is the bitter lettuce. It's interesting when you grill it because you get the char as well as the bitterness. Fig compote, I think you can tell figs that are kind of cooked down gently. Some sugar, and then the fried sage is just garnish across the top. I tried a little bit of the dish. It was really nice. Portion is decent. I mean, quail's a small bird, but I'm trying to remember if there were. I think there were like two of them. That's how it's enough for an entree. Um, Definitely a nice dish, but I mean, it's not like it's. If you're super hungry, I'd recommend getting something else or something in addition to this.
Okay. Yeah, these cranberry beans. We have a bunch of beans here. My mom has started like growing different beans, so occasionally we get some from the farm and going through and separating them because right now they're still growing together. So we haven't put them in different plots where we know, okay, these are this kind of beans, this kind of beans. So we go this entire process of separating them once we harvest. So looking at we have cranberry beans, but it's one of the
Quail.
unfortunate things with beans to me. It's like it's kind
Really
of a similar
excited
thing
about
with
Well,
this.
cranberry
lobsters and
beans
seafood. We talked
and
about this.
But all
It's
I
like
could
some
think about is
actual
quail, man.
I forget the name of it. Something in the actual thing that releases oxygen or with heat does something and it turns it red. With beans, most of them depend. They might have really cool colors when you actually harvest the bean, but when you cook it, they all kind of go to brown or like different kinds of shades of brown. I know there's like the lima beans, which is still green, but yeah, it's unfortunate. I wish there was a way to preserve more of the colors of the beans when you actually have them with that. But yeah, and as you mentioned, this is the quail. So this is like the bird of the rabbit thing, where it's like a tiny, tiny animal. it has a different, like an earthy kind of groundish taste to it, but it's a tiny, tiny creature.
Yeah, it's a leaner meat. I've typically had it well done. I don't know if you could do medium
Yeah,
rare.
it's
Well,
you almost can't. It's like too small to actually do that. Like you're gonna cook like, to get it cooked, everything's gonna cook through. Because the
yeah,
thing with like the rare, it's about like getting enough heat to get into the whole animal and still have it. And we talked about, yeah, you can have like raw crudo meat and things like that if the meat's been tasted well. But the rareness is normally like we're gonna crisp the outside with the inside. You can't crisp the outside of this animal without cooking the entire thing through. Like there's not enough flesh there for you to
no,
do that. So it's that's just the way you're gonna have it.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh,
So
yeah, nice dish too. Like I say, I think the pairings were interesting because the figs you figure are sweeter, but then the radicchio is bitter, but it's also charred, so there's that like flavor
yeah.
too. Yeah, really interesting stuff. Yeah.
Uh, Now to the next one. This is I'd say this is kind of I don't know if lamb is like a good this lamb chops type of thing. The rack lamb is like a typical type of Italian. It's in different kind of Italian regions. I think they definitely eat more lamb than goat. I actually haven't really found too many Italian places that actually eat goat. It's goat, pig, and cow, of course. What other? Yeah, I think that kind of comes down to it. They don't really have too many goat dishes. And the chicken is something that's very little used in Italian dishes all over the country. I think chicken is one of the least used. Even quail might even be more common than chicken for some odd reason. I think it's probably something to do just like the whatever was farmed in those regions back in the time when cuisine was developing. For some reason, chicken just wasn't a big one. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So we'll go to Australian rack of lamb with Swiss chard and secchi or ketchi with lemon yogurt and paired with the Bastianich Vespa Rosso. So this is one of the ones from their farm, right? From
Yep. This was.
their vineyard. Is it
Yep.
vineyard or vineyard?
I say vineyard, but
Vineyard, vineyard,
yeah.
vineyard,
So
vineyard, vineyard, vineyard.
yeah, so this lamb was excellent. I mean, I remember my mother actually said she wanted to come back just to try the lamb. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so then let's see here. Yeah, so the chechi, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's actually we call them beans. That's you see them on the plate there. Swiss chard, it's the green, the leaves sautéed, a little bit of the stem, lemon yogurt. I think that's self-explanatory. The Bastianich Vesperoso, you can tell it's a cousin to the white one. This means red wasp. The other means white wasp. It's based on Merlot, which is a Bordeaux grape. I think most people have heard of that, but um, it has a grape called Refosco, which is actually a grape native to Venice, which is where it's made. So it's similar to sort of a Bordeaux wine, so it pairs well with like lamb, steak, things like that. You get blackberry, rose, licorice, spices. It's one of those wines like it's on the heavier side, but it's not like super intense. So it works well with lamb because lamb's a red meat, but it's not. Um, like lamb is a mild like it's a red meat but it's not like super rich and heavy, so like if you would have like a heavy like a let's say a tomahawk steak or something, you would get a heavier wine, but the
Mhm.
intensity of this wine is about on par with the lamb.
Okay. And yeah, again with lamb, medium rare at most. If you do anything else, you shouldn't be eating it. I think some of these things that the meat's already you already killed a young animal for this. Eat the full flavor of the young animal. Don't also char the corpse of this young animal into the nothingness. Let that young life be taken away for a good cause of the good taste. I don't know. Probably stop there with that one. But yeah, so that's. I don't have much else to say on this one. I don't know. Why do you think? Why was this one of the better lambs that you had? What really appealed to you about this particular serving of way they put this lamb dish?
I mean, it was cooked exactly the way I liked. Medium rare, little zest on top. It was well seasoned. There's a little bit of fat on the outside, but a lot of it was rendered off because if you don't cook it properly, there's a very thick wall. But that was well. That was cooked well. Some mint, of course, pairs with the lamb. I like how people are doing more creative things with mint and lamb, though, because like I've said before, everyone used to just put mint jelly on the plate, which is extremely boring. It's one of those things.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's one of those things that's funny because like my mother and others will always bring that up. Like, oh, I want to do lamb with mint jelly. I'm like, come on, that's so boring. It's like, it's just like I said. Well, because originally people would serve it with mutton because mutton was so strong, and it's like you want to drown out the flavor. But
Mhm.
if it's lamb that's cooked medium rare and it's handled properly, I mean, it'll taste good on its own. So you want to add something that'll complement it, not something that'll drown out the strong flavor.
Yeah. And the chechi here look just like European chickpeas.
Yeah,
It's so
basically. Yeah.
sneaky to those. So yeah, yeah. And again, like the lemon yogurt, that's something that's normally like a dessert type of thing that can be added in with yogurt. Seem to go well with different meats. There's like a wide range of different yogurts that you can do. And that also could be one way of adding like the fruits to the actual main dishes. Think about like the proteins that you're having. There's probably a lot of yogurts that you can actually put in there. And this is something I think also more like Indian cooking, where like a lot of the curries and the sauces actually will have like yogurt actually part of it. And for those of y'all who do cook, or those of you who are familiar with some of the things like with chickens, when you make before you're making like fried chicken and things like that, sometimes people will marinate the actual chicken overnight in some yogurt or some buttermilk or things like that to just get different kind of things. And there's something in that pasteurized, fermented type of thing that breaks down the meat and softens it down and gets the actual flavors in there, and it kind of works with that. So yeah, that's a suggestion. If you are going to marinate meats with lime or citrus or those kind of things, don't leave it for too long. I know some people will marinate things for like 24 hours, but with some of these things, like the lemon will actually start breaking down the meat in some situations. So be careful with some of those. Those kind of lend themselves to more like shorter marinated times. Yeah.
Sure. Um.
Okay. So I think yeah, maybe we can close off here. It's a good closing off
Sure.
point. Like I said, we're going
Yeah.
to come back. Your mom wanted to come back for more with the lamb. I think this is a good point. You can
Yeah.
come back for more on this series. Now I was also kind of thinking with the quail. Now I have a friend that does a lot of sous vide type of cooking. Now we're also
Yeah.
talking about with the guy who's doing like the molecular gastronomy. There might be different ways to heat up to cook up the quail where you can do like a rare quail. Because like this with the sous vide, maybe there could be a way to do it where you have like rare quail without like roasting the bird up.
Well, the challenge too with there was what would the texture of the skin be? Because I mean, I don't know. I think in most other people they want that crispier skin, and the problem is to get the skin crispy, you would have to hit the outside with heat, and then if you were even if you were to do a blowtorch or something, the animal's so small, I think the blowtorch would just
Yeah,
kill it. So,
yeah.
because like for
Huh.
example with like pork belly, some people do it braised and seared, which I like a lot because you braise it, it takes on certain flavors and cooks down, but then you finish it in the broiler, it crisps up the outside, so that's really
Yeah,
nice. But it's a heavier thing, that's why it works. Whereas with this, like I say, the skin is so thin because with duck breast I've done sous vide before, but it has that thick wall of fat. So what you can do is you can cook it part way sous vide and then just finish it in the pan, sear it, like render the fat out, and then it's like cook it a little more so it's cooked medium rare and then it's done. But that's a thicker cut of meat plus you have that thick wall of fat. Whereas the quail, it's like that big and then you have that thin skin. So I don't really know how
yeah.
you do
Also,
that.
just explain the sous vide process to the people who are not familiar. Like, so that people are not be familiar with some of these cooking
Sure. So
techniques.
sous vide means under vacuum in French. Originally, it got the name because originally sous vide started. You started cooking things using vacuum sealed bags. Some people still do. Some people just use Ziploc bags. You cook things at a lower temperature. I've seen anywhere between 70, 80 degrees to 140. So you figure 180 is poaching temperature, 212 is a temperature water boils at. So you cook it low enough that you can cook, like for example, short ribs can be cooked medium rare and they're still tender all the way through, or you can cook eggs very gently, so the white will be cooked all the way, the yolk will be somewhat runny, but the white will still be super soft, whereas if you were to poach, then the white would solidify a little more.
Yeah.
Certain things are not recommended sous vide. Like Thomas Keller has that great book Under Pressure about it. For example, he says you can't do green vegetables because green vegetables you have to do high temperature and very quickly, because if you try to do it low and slow they just turn brown, so you can't do that.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can do different fish, you can do different meat, you can do, like I've done salsa fee like that. I've done, you could do carrots like that. You could do, I'm trying to think what are some other examples. I think potatoes maybe. Yeah, you can do different
The
things.
root and tubers, of course. Yeah, you can do the hard solid vegetables. You can do those.
But the challenge too is if you want the sear on the outside, that's going to change it. So like with what you can do with short ribs, the reason that works well is because you sear them in the pan and then you put them with the liquid in the bag and then you cook them. I've seen places that do them up to 2 days. I think some places do them
Oh
even
wow.
3 days. Yeah. But the thing is you cook them so low and so slow and then you pull them out and then when you heat them up for an order, you just heat up the sauce on the stove, throw them in, heat them up basically, and it's ready to go.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So that was part one of Babbo with a lot of suggestions to go there. It's definitely a place that is still open.
Yep.
Unfortunately, as you mentioned, some of the places Stephen has talked about were kind of closed down, even pre-Rona Chan. And then, of
Yep.
course, the last one, the more recent one you talked about, Dolly Varden, was one that actually opened during Rona Chan and is heading out, just had a recent different menu switch to them. So he's still out there eating his way around New York City. He's, as I mentioned at the start, he's ramping up to getting to the point where he's cooking a lot more with Christine, and she's going to come on to, she'll be here talking about different things. You've probably seen her in some of the pictures or something. And she also cooks as well, so she will might come and tell us about some of the dishes and things like that that she's making, and Stephen and them are making together. And there's going to be more places they'll be going to eat as well. What restaurant are you going to go eat today? Where are you going to eat today?
I'm not sure because she's sleeping right now, but we've been cooking more stuff at home lately. Like yesterday, we just had a salad and some chicken. I'm actually trying to eat out less. Well, in part, I mean, it's saving me money, which is good. I mean, I like the meals out, but I'm saving money, which is of course better for me in the long run. And it's like I've just found more creative ways to use things. So, for example, we made a salad and I can send you the picture. It didn't look that great. That's why I didn't post it. But I actually made a salad with ramp leaves and some different vegetables. And today I'm going to pickle the ramp stems. Some she and I are going to eat. Some I want to share with my family. We might I'm trying to think, like at her place we've done, like she's done like a stir fry type thing. I've done risotto there. Just trying to be creative and using what we can. I mean, obviously I do want the bigger kitchen at some point, but it's like right now just do what I can with what I can, and saving money. And as we've discussed, I've been cutting back drinking, which is saving me a lot of money too. It's funny, you cut back the stuff, you realize like how much money you spend. So
it's a lot,
that's
especially in New York City. It's
yeah.
a lot.
Yeah, especially I mean, I can afford it, but it's one of those like, is it really worth it, especially in the long run? No. I'm not stopping eating out entirely, but it's like I am cutting it back for sure. And what else was I gonna say? Yeah, and we want to do more videos and stuff. Like she had a video yesterday of me doing showing the rams cutting off the leaves. I wanted to saute the leaves, but I didn't want them to go bad, so we just used them in salad because I bought them a few days ago at Union Square Market, and I don't want the leaves to sit forever because that's how they go bad.
Yeah.
But I wanted to do sauteed ramp leaves as well. I wanted to do a bunch of stems because once you pickle them, they'll last, and I can share them with other people. I was going to experiment with more risottos. I got her hooked on risotto, so I did two versions. I did one with chicken stock, one with seafood stock. I may do other varieties too, just experiment like with the juices and stuff. Not really a whole lot else to say, I don't think.
Yeah, with these, it's like with home cooking, it's more about getting the taste first, and then like when you're working in a restaurant, then you worry about the plating. Once you get the flavors and the things to where you want them to be, then you can now think about, okay, now that I got the taste, I'll figure out like a plating if I have guests or if I just want to do it for myself. But like in my experience, I think part of the reason I might not be that good at plating is because there was like a long time in my life where I was cooking for myself. So it's like years and years. So it's just like I just want to get the flavors. I'm not really too into. And then like when I was cooking for myself, I wasn't. I guess I would take pictures of the stuff sometimes, but it's different when you actually like at a restaurant, you're like doing the like Instagram type of thing for it, than when you actually just have the food that you made by yourself because it's going to eat it anyway. But yeah.
Well, there's certain things too that I don't post if they're not up to my standards. Like for example, I cooked salmon I think the other week, but like the skin was a little messed up, so I didn't want to post it because it's not up to my standards. I had a hollandaise, but unfortunately the hollandaise broke where the fat and the egg sort of separate. So I didn't want to post that because it's like it's not up to my standards, and I don't want to show it off if I'm not happy with it. So things like that. But I also didn't have some of the equipment I needed. I mean, it's my fault. I should have planned better. But it's like I'm not going to show off something that I know like I can do better than because it's just what's the point? Yeah.
Maybe we need to get a situation. We'll get things set up maybe with like a members only section where we have like something like a locals page or something where we just do more of the whole like experiments of some of these things that we do with these things. Is we have a lot of other content. If you enjoyed this series, we have a lot more in the restaurant and the food things. As I mentioned, we have a lot more even on the QR where you consume series, which is a sub series. Also, that's more food talk. Then we have other things where we're talking about politics and just other kind of regular current affairs type of things. And then we have a different series is like the ones like I Know Great People, where we talk to different people in food industry and different places definitely check out the one or the food industry with Stephen, who was the first one on that series. He was talking about how he got to the food industry, his background into it, and a couple other food related ones. We have one there is a lot of food related content. We had one with Mark Kibler talking about him actually having an own like personal family farm in the United States of America. We have one with Steve K. Fontaine living in Costa Rica, talking about his own restaurant there, Perfect Burger. Then of course we had the one I mentioned with Laura Mons when she was talking about her experience as a natural wine connoisseur and involved in the natural wine industry in Canada. So more content coming. Stephen, anything else you want to say to close off on this part of this one?
Not really. I mean, highly recommend Babbo. I mean, few other dishes. Most of the entrees are done. It'll just be dessert. And there were a few drinks I posted, which I want to discuss too. Again, I know you don't drink, but there's some creative stuff that I think deserves some credit. Not sure. I may go back again soon. I'm not sure. Like I said, I've been eating out less. I definitely want to try more stuff on their menu. I was telling her too, if they have risotto, we can try that now that she's gotten into risotto. So I'm curious to see how they do it. And I'm sure they do a good job. Yeah, maybe when mom comes back into the city, go back. I'll see. I mean, I don't have it set in mind, but definitely go back at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you enjoy the series, more coming. We already have a lot in in the sack that I need to edit and get posted. And there's all the restaurants that he's already taken pictures of and been to that we haven't gotten to as well. And he's still eating, he's still cooking. And not all of these, once we get kind of these big things in the in the vaults out with these longer like 1.5 hour parts of it, we'll do ones where we do follow up. So it's like, okay, we went out with a couple of people and just do like a thing with a group of people and things like this. We're figuring out ways to include more people into it, so we're not just saying, Stephen, send him out there, go eat all this food for us so we can talk about it. We'll figure out a way to get other people involved in this whole dishing on dish mess.
Yeah, when you eventually come back here, you can join me. I mean, maybe Christine. Well, yeah, we can because I always like discussing even the same dish with different people because it's like, like there's a certain dish that I may love, someone else may not like. There's a dish that everyone might like. There's but it's interesting to hear those different takes. Yeah.
Yeah, so most definitely, if y'all have been to Babbo, if you've been to any of the restaurants that Stephen has talked about in this series, check them out. Let us know what you think about them. If there's restaurants that you suggest Stephen should check out in New York City, let us know, and he might take those suggestions in and go to them. But yeah, I think that's it for me. This has been Silas. Stephen, thanks a lot again. Guys, gals, and everybody else in between, thank y'all for listening, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.